Landlord insults black tenant, finds out. He just bought the entire building. The landlord strutted through the hallway, inspecting tenants like they were beneath him. When he reached one particular door, he smirked. The tenant was black, modestly, dressed, carrying groceries. With arrogance dripping from his voice, the landlord sneered, "People like you should be grateful I even let you live here." The insult stung, but the tenant didn't argue. He simply nodded, holding back his emotions. What the landlord didn't know was that the man he looked down on had been working quietly, building something far greater than an apartment lease. Because just weeks later, the landlord would receive a shocking notice. The very man he mocked now owned the entire building, including the landlord's own office. Derek Hayes was no stranger to prejudice. Growing up, he had seen his parents struggle under landlords who saw them as less than human. Rent hikes, poor maintenance, and constant disrespect were things he knew all too well. Those experiences fueled his determination to rise above. Derek studied hard, graduated with a degree in finance, and worked tirelessly in real estate investment. He wasn't flashy. He preferred moving in silence, acquiring small properties, renovating them, and eventually building a portfolio that gave him both wealth and freedom. Despite his success, Derek remained humble. He continued living in a modest apartment building while finalizing a major purchase, the very building he lived in. His vision was to turn it into a safe, respectful community for all tenants, free from the toxic behavior he had endured as a child. Enter Richard Collins, the landlord. Richard was the epitome of arrogance, entitled, dismissive, and openly biased. He saw tenants not as people, but as income streams. Whenever he encountered Derek, he made snide comments about his clothes, his background, and even implied he was lucky to live there. One day, while Derek was unloading groceries, Richard crossed the line. "People like you," he said coldly, "should be thankful someone like me gives you a roof. Don't ever forget your place." Derek said nothing. He didn't shout back. He didn't argue. Instead, he smiled faintly, nodded, and went upstairs. What Richard never suspected was that Derek was already in the process of buying the entire property, and that soon, the balance of power would flip completely. Behind the scenes, Derek's deal was moving forward. After years of saving, investing, and networking, he had partnered with a group of investors to purchase the apartment building. The paperwork was nearly complete, but Derek chose to keep quiet until the time was right. Meanwhile, Richard continued his behavior. Tenants complained about broken heating, leaking roofs, and unsafe hallways. Instead of fixing problems, Richard brushed them off, telling tenants if they didn't like it, they could leave. He even threatened Derek once, saying, "If you can't pay on time, I'll have you out in a heartbeat." But Derek paid on time. He always had. He endured Richard's arrogance with patience, knowing justice was coming soon. Finally, the day arrived. The deal closed. Derek became the legal owner of the entire property. The former landlord, Richard, was now just another employee under the new ownership structure. But Derek didn't celebrate publicly. Instead, he arranged a meeting with Richard in the building's office. Richard walked in, smirking as usual. "What's this about? Another complaint?" he asked. Derek calmly slid the ownership papers across the desk. Richard's smirk faded. His face went pale as his eyes scanned the documents. What is this?" he stammered. Derek looked him in the eye. "This building belongs to me now. Every unit, every office, including this one." Silence filled the room. For the first time, Richard had no words. The news spread through the building like wildfire. Tenants, many of whom had suffered under Richard's neglect, celebrated. Derek immediately announced plans to renovate the property, improve living conditions, and ensure every tenant was treated with respect. But the story wasn't about revenge. Derek didn't humiliate Richard in public. He didn't gloat. He simply let the truth stand. Arrogance crumbles when faced with quiet, determined resilience. Richard, humiliated, tried to push back. He insisted there had been a mistake. He even threatened legal action. But the paperwork was airtight. Derek had not only purchased the building, but also secured the support of the City Housing Board. In one dramatic moment, Richard returned to the building, demanding answers. He confronted Derek in the lobby, shouting about respect and authority. Tenants gathered, watching the scene unfold. Derek remained calm. He raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear. Respect isn't given by a title. Richard, it's earned by how you treat people. For years you disrespected every person who lived here. That ends today. The crowd erupted in applause. Richard stormed out, defeated, as tenants cheered for their new landlord. Under Derek's ownership, the building transformed. Repairs were made swiftly, hallways were brightened, and community spaces were created. For the first time, tenants felt valued. Derek set up monthly meetings where residents could voice concerns, and he treated everyone with the dignity they deserved. Richard, meanwhile, faded into the background. He had lost the one thing he used to define himself: control. But Derek never held grudges. He didn't fire Richard outright. Instead, he gave him the option to stay as a property manager under new rules. Richard refused, too proud to serve, under the man he once insulted. Years later, Derek's building became a model for fair housing practices in the city. His story spread as an example of perseverance, dignity, and the power of success against prejudice. In speeches to young entrepreneurs, Derek often shared his philosophy. True power isn't about crushing those who doubted you. It's about creating something better for those who come after you. The moral was clear. Racism and arrogance may try to hold people down, but resilience and vision can turn insults into legacies.